If you are a United States citizen or a lawful permanent resident, and you want to bring a family member to live with you here in the United States, you have probably heard some very alarming claims recently. Maybe you saw a headline about visa pauses. Maybe someone told you that income requirements have skyrocketed in 2026 and that sponsoring your spouse or parent has become nearly impossible. Maybe you are sitting at your kitchen table right now feeling overwhelmed, wondering if the door has been closed on your family. I want you to take a breath. I have been practicing immigration law for over 25 years, and I have helped hundreds of families navigate the Affidavit of Support process. My goal today is not to scare you, but to explain these new numbers calmly and truthfully. What you are hearing in the news is not a ban, it is not a freeze. It is a routine cost of living adjustment that happens almost every year, and understanding it correctly can save you months of worry and help you move forward with confidence. Let me start by addressing the biggest source of confusion. In 2026, the financial threshold for sponsoring certain family members has been updated. If you are sponsoring a spouse, child, or parent as a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, you now need to demonstrate that your household income is at least 125% of the federal poverty guideline. For a household of 2 people, which is the most common scenario when you are sponsoring just one immediate family member, that amount is now $25,550 per year. I know that number might sound high to some of you, especially if you are living on a fixed income or if you are recently retired, but here is what I need you to understand. This is not a new rule invented in 2026 to make immigration harder. This requirement has existed for decades. Every year, the Department of Health and Human Services updates the poverty guidelines to reflect the cost of living in the United States. Immigration law simply uses those updated numbers to determine financial eligibility. The 2026 numbers are higher than 2025 because inflation has increased. That is the entire story. There is no conspiracy. There is no hidden agenda. It is an economic adjustment, and it applies equally to everyone filing an affidavit of support. Now let me explain what this really means for your case. When you sponsor a family member, you are required to file Form I-864, which is called the Affidavit of Support. This form is a legally binding contract in which you promise the U.S. government that you will financially support your sponsored immigrant so that they do not need to rely on public benefits. The government wants to see proof that you have enough income or assets to support both yourself and the person you are sponsoring. That is why household size matters. If you are a single U.S. citizen living alone and you want to sponsor your spouse, your household size is 2. You plus your spouse. If you have 2 dependent children living with you, your household size is 4. The poverty guideline increases as your household size increases, so the income requirement goes up accordingly. This is not designed to disqualify you. It is designed to ensure that the person you are sponsoring will have financial stability when they arrive. Here is where I see families make mistakes. They assume that if their personal income falls short of the requirement, their case is automatically denied. That is not true. Immigration law provides multiple pathways to meet the financial threshold, and understanding these options is the key to a successful petition. Let me walk you through them one at a time. First, income. Your income includes wages from employment, self-employment earnings, Social Security benefits, pensions, rental income, and certain types of retirement distributions. If your income is reported on your tax return, it generally counts. If you have been working steadily and your tax returns show income at or above the required threshold, you are in good shape. You will submit your most recent federal tax return, typically the 1040, along with a transcript from the IRS, and you will also provide recent pay stubs and a letter from your employer confirming your current employment and salary. If your income alone does not meet the requirement, you can include the income of your spouse if your spouse lives with you. That income can be counted even if your spouse is not the petitioner, as long as they agree to be jointly liable on the Affidavit of Support. This is particularly helpful for married couples where one spouse is sponsoring a parent or a child from a prior relationship. If income is still not enough, you can use assets. The law allows you to substitute assets for income shortfall under a specific formula. For immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, which include spouses, unmarried children under 21, and parents of adult U.S. citizens, The rule is that your net value of assets must be at least 3 times the amount of the income shortfall. Let me give you a real example. If the income requirement for your household size is $25,550 and your annual income is only $20,000, you have a shortfall of $5,550. To make up that shortfall using assets, you would need assets worth at least 3 times that amount, which is $16,650. Assets can include the value of your home minus any mortgage or liens, bank account balances, stocks, bonds, retirement accounts that can be liquidated, and certain types of property. You will need to provide documentation proving ownership and value. This might include bank statements, property appraisals, or brokerage account statements. The key is that these assets must be convertible to cash within 1 year without causing undue hardship. If you cannot meet the income requirement on your own and you do not have enough assets, there is a third option that many families rely on, and that is using a joint sponsor. A joint sponsor is another person who agrees to accept financial responsibility for your immigrant family member alongside you. The joint sponsor must be a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, must be at least 18 years old, must be domiciled in the United States, and must meet the income requirement independently for their own household size, plus the person being sponsored. The joint sponsor does not need to be related to you or to the immigrant. They can be a friend, a sibling, an adult child, or even a coworker. What matters is that they meet the financial threshold and they are willing to sign the affidavit of support, accepting legal responsibility. I have seen families successfully use parents, adult children, and close family friends as joint sponsors. This is not a loophole. It is a legitimate and widely accepted method built into the immigration system to ensure that families are not unfairly separated simply because one sponsor does not meet the income requirement alone. Let me pause here and address another concern I have been hearing a lot lately. Some people are worried that immediate relative petitions are now subject to visa caps or that there is a waiting list because of changes in 2026. That is not accurate. Immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, meaning spouses, parents, and unmarried children under 21, are not subject to annual numerical limits. There is no quota. There is no waiting list for visa availability for these relationships. What people may be confusing is the processing time. Yes, USCIS has experienced backlogs. Yes, cases are taking longer than they used to. But that is a processing delay, not a legal restriction. Your petition will be processed. Your case will move forward. It may take several months or even over a year, depending on the service center and the complexity of your case, but the pathway remains open. For family preference categories, which include adult children and siblings of U.S. citizens and spouses and unmarried children of lawful permanent residents, there are annual limits and priority dates do apply. But even in those categories, the financial requirement is the same. The 2026 update to the poverty guidelines applies uniformly across all family-based sponsorships. It does not change the structure of the system. It simply updates the dollar amount you need to demonstrate. Now I want to talk about what you should be doing right now. If you are preparing to file or if you have already filed and you are waiting for an interview, first gather your financial documents carefully. You will need your most recent federal tax return, and I strongly recommend obtaining an IRS tax transcript rather than just submitting a photocopy of your return. The transcript is considered more reliable by USCIS. You will need recent pay stubs covering at least the last 6 months. You will need a letter from your employer on company letterhead stating your position, your salary, and the date you were hired. If you are self-employed, you will need to provide additional documentation, such as business tax returns, profit and loss statements, and possibly a letter from your accountant. If you are using assets, organize your documentation now. Get recent bank statements, property appraisals, and account balances. If you are using a joint sponsor, make sure they understand the legal responsibility they are taking on and that they are prepared to provide the same level of financial documentation. Second, understand that the affidavit of support is reviewed very carefully. USCIS officers are trained to look for red flags, such as inconsistent income reporting, unexplained gaps in employment, or documents that do not match up. Do not guess. Do not estimate. Use the actual figures from your tax returns and pay stubs. If your income varies from year to year, Be prepared to explain why. If you recently retired or changed jobs, provide a letter explaining the circumstances and demonstrating that your current income is stable. Consistency and honesty are critical. Third, if you are close to the income threshold or if your financial situation is complicated, consider consulting with an immigration attorney before you file. I am not saying this to create fear. I am saying this because a well-prepared affidavit of support can be the difference between an approval and a request for evidence or even a denial. An attorney can review your financial documents, advise you on whether you should use assets or a joint sponsor, and help you avoid common mistakes that cause delays. Let me also address the emotional side of this process, because I know how much weight you are carrying. Sponsoring a family member is not just a legal process. It is deeply personal. You are trying to reunite with someone you love. You are trying to build a life together in this country. You may have been separated for months or even years. You may be worried that one mistake on a form or one missing document will ruin everything. I understand that. I have sat across the table from families who were in tears because they thought they would never see their loved ones again. But I also want you to know that this system, while complicated, is designed to work. Thousands of families successfully sponsor loved ones every single year. The financial requirements exist to protect both the immigrant and the U.S. government, but they are not insurmountable. If you take the time to understand the rules, organize your documents, and seek help when you need it, you can meet these requirements. Finally, I want to leave you with this. The 2026 updates are not a crisis. They are not a closing door. They are a reflection of economic reality in the United States, and they apply the same way to everyone. Whether your income is exactly at the threshold or well above it, whether you need a joint sponsor or you qualify easily on your own, the law treats every petitioner the same. Your job is to present a clear, honest, and complete picture of your financial situation. If you do that, your case has every chance of success. I know this process feels overwhelming. I know the headlines make it sound like everything has changed overnight. But the truth is that family-based immigration remains one of the most stable and well-established pathways in U.S. law. You are not alone in this. Millions of families have walked this road before you, and with the right preparation and the right understanding, you will walk it too.